There we are. This is one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite people to have ever been on the earth, Howard Zinn, the author of one of my favorite books ever, The People's History of the United States. And this quote comes from an article he published in The Nation in 2004, about 6 years before he passed away, from an article called The Optimism of Uncertainty. And I feel like it really applies to the time that we're in now. So I'm going to share it with you all before we get going. Revolutionary change does not come as one cataclysmic moment. Beware of such moments, but as an endless succession of surprises moving zigzag toward a more decent society. We don't have to engage in grand heroic actions to participate in the process of change. Small acts, when multiplied by millions of people, can transform the world. Even when we don't win, there is fun and fulfillment in the fact that we have been involved with other good people in doing something worthwhile. We need hope. An optimist isn't necessarily a blithe, slightly sappy whistler in the dark of our time. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, and kindness. So this just really resonates with me. The coronavirus pandemic certainly has not been one cataclysmic moment, but an ongoing series of many confusing moments. But I think we are seeing millions of people doing amazing actions individually together and starting to transform the world and the systems, and hopefully moving those towards more equitability during this challenging time. So I just want to share that with you all. All right, let's go to the next slide, please. All right, our desired outcomes for today are that people feel more positive when they leave this meeting. Hope you guys are smiling when we're wrapping up. We want participants to gain skills in leading groups through decision-making, specifically using a technique called open, narrow, close. We want folks to leave with an understanding of shared leadership and techniques to use when being the lone facilitator for a group. And we hope that participants are encouraged and learn tips for encouraging dialogue with groups that you work with. All right, let's get to the next slide, please. So first, for y'all been with us for the past several of these, we just want to start with a little meeting etiquette. We know that you're working from home. That can be interruptive. We understand if you need to step away. Please try to give us your attention. Try to minimize background distractions if possible. Please, this is probably one of the most important ones, is please use the note and no video buttons located at the bottom of your screen when needed or not speaking. Just as you would in face-to-face meetings, extend common courtesy to everyone on the call. Use text and emoticons appropriately, and be respectful of other viewpoints which may differ from your own. And please welcome this as an opportunity to share with and learn from others. And we encourage all sorts of activity in the chat box. All right, next slide, please. These are kind of some outcomes, some guidelines that we usually share with folks at the beginning of meetings. There's more detailed version of this, but we just kind of ask folks to think about these when we're starting off a meeting, just as a way to set the tone. And that's be brave and take risks. Nothing can substitute experience. Be here now. I am. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Perfect is the enemy of good. Respect yourself and others. And nothing about us without us is for us. So we can go to the next slide, please. All right. So y'all, we're going to get into a little bit of breakouts here in a second. But first I want to give you kind of to do some check-ins and just say hi to each other. But first I just want to give a Zoom tip to ask everyone to rename yourself in Zoom with your preferred pronouns. So as a host in the latest version of Zoom, it actually allows you the option to allow participants to rename themselves in the toolbar. And you can also rename anyone by clicking participants or moving the cursor over a participant, selecting more, and then select rename. So this works great for people who appear as phone numbers, and if you know their name, you can hover over them as a host and change their name to tag them so that folks participating on the Zoom app or on our computer can know who they are. But participants themselves can also rename themselves by clicking on, going up over your picture, moving the cursor over their name, selecting more, and selecting rename. So if you could just go ahead in there and add your pronouns, put your name in there, whatever you want us to call you, and add your pronouns next to it. It would just be helpful for us on this call right now. So I'm going to do that myself. All right. So we're going to go into some 4-minute breakouts, and we're going to do that in small groups. And we just want to, and before we get in there, throw your name in the chat box. Let us know your name, your affiliation of a food council or a organization that you're with. We'd love to just see that in the chat box. So go ahead and say hi in the chat box to everybody there. And then we're going to go into quick breakouts, which is a function of Zoom, which I'm sure many of you have seen by now, and just do some quick check-ins. And we're just going to ask, how are you today? So can we go ahead and get stuck in our groups, please? All right, well, hopefully that was a good way to check in and say hi to some folks. So I'm going to pass it along to LaShawna, and we're going to move into some talk of being a lone facilitator and some shared leadership.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, everybody. Good to see all y'all. And our check-in was super nice to see folks and get to chat it up. So we're going to talk about being a lone facilitator and how that feels and what we can do to help ourselves out when we find ourselves being the only one trying to curate a meeting and get things going and take the notes and all the things. So we're going to start with a poll. If we have that ready. If not, we'll come back to it. There we go. So if y'all can just engage with this poll really quickly, if you don't mind. If you are facilitating, convening a meeting, are you taking on all the roles, tech, facilitation, leading discussion, note-taking, and or participating in discussion? Are you trying to do all the things? Be honest, y'all. And then the second question, would you be willing to help with one of these roles if someone asked? So if somebody asks you for some help, would you be willing to do something? And then I don't know how to get to the results, but there we go. Nice. Somebody behind the scenes helping out. See, you ain't got to work alone, y'all. You could get some help. Folks say, are you, a lot of y'all said sometimes you're the one doing all the things. Like a lot of us on the call right now, that you sometimes do all the things. And then a few folks saying, no, you just don't roll that way. Look, if I can't get no help, I'm not even, we just can't meet today, right? So, okay, cool. And then would you be willing, everybody said, of course I'd be willing to do something if I were approached, hopefully ahead of time and asked to do so. So I want to talk just a little bit about an experience that I have where I tried to be all that and a bag of chips, and it did not work out in my favor. So was convening some folks. This is a regular group that's been meeting for some time. Obviously now during COVID, we're doing our Zoom calls instead of meeting in person. So I'm very familiar with these folks. I set up the Zoom. Sure enough, folks actually engaged and clicked on the link and came to the meeting and all the things. So it's great. So we're starting our meeting. And so then I'm realizing that I'm all by myself. So with Zoom now, if you're familiar, you know that you have to actually let folks into the meeting, which is a security feature, which is really good. But if you're the only person doing something, then you end up trying to start the meeting, checking to see if folks are waiting in the waiting room to come into the meeting. I mean, don't even start trying to share your screen, because now you can't see what's going on behind what you're sharing, and all the things are happening. The chat box is going off. And so I'm finding myself in a place of like, okay, I can't do all this. And I think a couple of times even on the meeting that I had, that I was hosting, I even told folks, look, there's a lot going on and I just need to get my bearings. And so hang on, I'll be back. And so then I had to flip to a different screen, trying to make sure folks are getting in. Then for added security feature, the, Zoom also has where you can lock the meeting. So if you know all the participants are in the meeting and you want to do that, add that feature. And then because I'm so ambitious with Zoom, I had scheduled this meeting to have breakout rooms. So now I'm the person who's got to get folks into breakout rooms, make sure it's balanced, get people in there, tell them what to do, make sure folks know what notes they need to have. And now I can't actually facilitate because I can't be in both rooms at the same time. So I had a hot mess going on. It ended up working out. Luckily, I was meeting with folks that I know who love me. I love them. They're not judgmental, but you know, there are things that I could have done ahead of time to keep myself from being stressed out, and all the things kind of falling on me to make sure each piece was in order. If I had just taken the time to reach out to some of these team members and say, hey, could you do this? Could you do this? To kind of keep the meeting running smoothly. So there are things that you can do. We don't have to try to be, you know, Zoom king and queen during COVID. Like we really can share, and we can get team members to step in and do something. And if you're working with a team and folks aren't really wanting to do a lot of talking, I'm going to show you our list of what we're doing today on this in this facilitation training. So, you know, there'll be plenty of folks who actually will not be speaking, but they're behind the scenes doing a lot of things. Yeah, thanks for putting that up. And so we have, you know, these team roles. When we met, we go through what we're planning to do for the agenda for the day, and we assign roles. And then each of us were able to say, hey, I can do that, I can do that. And so we have a full team approach. And so just because you see me talking now, somebody's behind the scenes doing the slides, somebody else did that poll. And so then that way I can really focus on engaging with you all and speaking right now, and not fumbling around with my keyboard and all of that. Go back to that previous slide, if you don't mind. The one before it. Yeah, so I talked about it anyhow, but I wanted to show you that, you know, you can give participants roles. Everybody on the call today says, yeah, I'd do something. So no doubt others in your networks would be feeling the same way. They would totally step up and do something. So when we're thinking about shared leadership, if we want to go ahead and name the desired outcomes, we do that with our team. We've named what we want to try to get accomplished today within our time together. We've created an agenda so we can, you know, kind of guide where we're going and getting some time frames. Is my time up? No, I'm good. So we can make sure, you know, we have some time, and sometimes you go over, sometimes, you know, you have a few minutes to spare. Like in the beginning, we had our whole Zoom link issue going on, so we started a few minutes late, but Jared was really thoughtful and careful to kind of get us moving and get us to this point. And just ask for help. Be vulnerable enough to say, look, I need some help because I can't do all these things, and I want the meeting to go smoothly. I want folks to know that we've taken the time and the energy to put into creating something that folks will enjoy and get something out of. And if it's decision making, that we can actually get to making a decision. Is there another slide? That's it, I think. Yeah. Hey, that was what I needed to talk about. Share the greatness of Zoom meetings and facilitation with your friends, with your team, with folks in your network. I'm passing it on to, I don't know, because I can't see.
Jenny.
Jenny, sweet Jenny.
Thanks, Lashana. Yeah, let us know if you guys have any other tips or things that you do to help share in the workload, share in the leadership for your meetings. We always like to know more. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the main chunk of this session, which is about decision making and or facilitating agreement. So we wanted to share some tools about that. And when we talk about agreements, it's going to help people work together to reach a common goal, right? So when you build understanding and agreement, as a facilitator, you're encouraging teamwork and you're encouraging collaboration. And meetings are often places where discussion happens and strategy happens and decisions are made about how to move forward. And so in these discussions, participants are going to open a conversation, get a lot of ideas, they're going to narrow it, and hopefully close it on different topics. And along the way, you're going to create small agreements and learn from each other and build on those ideas. So facilitators help reach those agreements by really focusing on the task and guiding the process. And so we're going to share some tools about that. And so in this next graphic, we just wanted to share this reference piece about different types of decision making. And this kind of like grid just shows different processes that can be used for the need for speed and the need for sustainability. And so from left to right, decisions are made from fast or faster. And then from the top to the bottom, they're made with more sustainability. And so at the top, you can see that consensus might be the slowest, but it might also be the most sustainable. And then down at the bottom right-hand corner, there's one leader that ends up making a decision. And that might be fast, but it also might have the least impact, right? But one of the reasons we like this graphic is because in the bottom left-hand corner, it talks about the different factors that might influence how you make these decisions and the processes you choose. And it should change because it changes on the team size, who's in the room and who's at the table. It depends on the culture of the group, if you guys have met for a long period of time or if it's the first time you've come together. It depends on the personalities in the room and then also the content. If your content is really important and really impacts a lot of people, your decision-making process may be different, right? If it doesn't have a lot of impact. So that's just a reference point. So now we're going to get to our main topic or tool for today, which is open, narrow, close. And this tool we've used a couple times, and I first want to say that we found this tool from our friends at the Interaction Institute for Social. They're Northeast and they're amazing and they do really great work. So we're going to learn about this tool. So facilitators usually start a discussion in a more kind of like open, generative space where you really get a lot of ideas, opinions, and information. But the problem is sometimes that space never ends, right? It's difficult to narrow all those ideas down to the next way to move forward. And so this narrowing space is a space to really make sense of all the ideas and understand them and have an idea of how to move forward. It's the evaluation process. And then the close is when you really get to specific proposals that are refined and agreements are actually made. And so if you notice in this graphic, the shapes of those triangles are spaces for open, narrow, close. And in the open, it's big, it's the biggest space, right? That correlates to the amount of data that you're collecting, the amount of ideas that you have. And then when you narrow it, it gets smaller. And then when you close it, it's smaller than that, right? But when you think about facilitating a conversation and coming to a decision like this, the amount of time that you need to get through each of these is actually reversed. You don't need as much time to like have a brainstorm, but you often do need more time to narrow it and then absolutely to close it and have some sort of decision on how to move forward. So think about that as a facilitator because the amount of time you need in each of your agendas is going to change and depend on where you're at in this process. So I don't know about you guys, but I've definitely been in a conversation in meetings where we do take a ton of time to explore ideas and then we make a decision and narrow and close it in like a minute. But that's not where a lot of the learning happens and a lot of the evaluation and getting people on board, right? So we need to make sure we have enough time to accurately close the conversation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these, and then we're going to spend a bunch of time in breakout groups relating to a particular topic that everybody's experiencing right now and practice an open, narrow, close with you. So let's go to open. So for the open, there's a couple tools here that you can use to open the conversation. One is brainstorm. It's where you're going to be really creating a lot of space for ideas, and it's going to be more of a creative space. So making sure when you have a brainstorm space, everybody's ideas are okay. You're going to encourage people to not evaluate the ideas right now, and then just encourage people to build on those ideas. So that's the brainstorm is where you get as many ideas as possible. And then for a list, you might get a smaller number of ideas. You're going to generate more of a short inventory. So you might say, let's list 4 to 5 ideas that need to be addressed immediately. Or I have a list of 4, can we add 3 or 4 ideas to this? So it's generating a list, but you're not going wide open. For making a proposal is another idea for a place to start. And you might ask someone that knows a lot about the issue, like Tess, you know a lot about farm to school right now. Can you create a suggestion for how we move forward with this? And you start there as opening the discussion with someone that has a lot of information to share and define the problem. And then I think the most important part of this opening space is that you clarify the ideas that are listed. You want to make sure that everybody understands those ideas before you ask them to actually decide and ask them to evaluate them, right? You want to make a well-informed decision, but if you don't know what the ideas really mean, then you can't really make a well-informed decision. So that's an important part of this. So now you've got all of these ideas. So now go to narrow. And so this is where we make sense of what's happening. And some tools for that is eliminating duplicates. That's someone we use a lot, and it's important. So you can say, now we have 20 ideas. Are there any here that are exactly the same? And it's important to not eliminate ones that are sort of the same. You got to clarify what that is. But if there's any that are exactly the same, you can eliminate them. Then you can prioritize this ranking. So in this particular method, they suggest breaking the ideas down into 3 different tiers. So the ones that people have, you know, the top, middle, and lower energy or lower choice ideas. So 3 different tiers. And so that's why this N over 3 method is important. So it's just giving you like a gut instinct of where people are at. It gives you like the group temperature or pulse on the ideas. And then you can ask what stands out. What kind of patterns are coming up once you see all these ideas in 3 different kind of tiers? And then again, another important piece of this like narrowing is advocating. When you sit back and look at these ideas, we want to bring our own personal experience and our knowledge into this mix. And you might see an idea that might be on the lower tier, and then you want to make a case for that idea and share and explain why you think it should move to the top. Or the vice versa, why you think a top idea may not be as relevant. So it's a space to really think about your own experience and your expertise and how you might want to advocate for an idea coming up. And again, this is a space to just listen to people, what they have to say, and learn from them, but not necessarily rebuttal. So the last part is close. And this is often the hardest part, as you probably know, and it takes the most time, right? But if you're doing the work in the narrowing part and you're clarifying the ideas, then it should be a lot easier because people have a better understanding of what's happening. So here's a couple ways you can get to your close. One is that you revisit the desired outcomes. Don't mind the spelling. Don't tell me about it. Spelling error. I see it. And so that's just to make sure you're on focus. So revisit your desired outcomes to see, like, are we getting what we really wanted to? And then you can ask if anybody has a proposal. After you've gone through this whole piece of narrowing, ask if anybody has a proposal for how to move forward. Or you can use a negative poll. which is basically, can we cut any of these out of the list? Are there any ones that we can eliminate that just don't have a lot of energy, are pretty low priority, and we can just simplify the list? Two other options around build up and eliminate. That's more of one to just like, again, evaluate and say, what if we add this option to option A? Can we combine them and make a better option? So it's really kind of negotiating in some ways and combining options, building up. Both and is always important, really trying to avoid either or thinking or win and lose solutions. So really thinking about, again, building on ideas. Another option is just to take a step back and be strategic and think about what's missing. Like what are we not thinking of? Who's not at the table right now? And what would they bring to the conversation? What might we be missing here? And then checking for agreement. Like, is anyone opposed to these top 3 solutions? And so for all these, it's not like you have to do every single one of these tools in open, narrow, close, but this just gives you a list of different ways to get to each section of the decision-making process. So you might just choose a couple. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. Well, feel free to use the chat. And what we're gonna do,
Jenny, we have a question.
What ways is this impacted by Zoom? The video, yeah. It is definitely impacted by Zoom. In some ways, I think that we've talked about in this training, we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we're hearing from everyone. So using our rounds to get feedback and making sure we're hearing from everyone is important. And for the facilitator, really relying on people that might be more quiet, asking them pointed questions, because you know in a meeting in person, you're actually able to feel energy and see kind of behaviors that you're like, huh, they're thinking about something and trying to like bring out more information. And then also you'll see as we practice right now, we usually use dot voting a lot for prioritizing. You need to do that differently in Zoom meetings, right? And I also think just keeping energy up instead of just sitting in one place, that's a difficult one. And so having different facilitators and thinking about making sure different people are talking is a way just to like break up some of the monotony of a video. I would love to hear what other ways you guys are thinking of too. And so what we're gonna do now is practice this so you get a better sense of how this might work. And so we're gonna go into breakout rooms, and we're just gonna talk about this discussion of food access in the times of COVID. And so real life, we don't have to really explain this right now. Unemployment is an all-time high, right? And food banks and food pantries are in incredibly high demand, and food donations are down. So we're just gonna do this brainstorm around what are your brightest, most creative ideas to help people get the food they need. And so one of our team members is gonna facilitate, and one of them will take notes. And you're gonna be in breakout groups for about 20 minutes. We'll see how that goes, and you're gonna figure out your best and brightest ideas. So you'll just be in 2 groups, and your goal is to answer this question using these techniques and come up with 3 to 5 ideas. Okay, you guys, was that enough time?
No.
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 Dang it.
Sorry about
We're
it.
so close though.
Sorry about it, y'all. Well, we did want you to experience it, and that's what you did, at least the first part. So we gave you about 25 minutes for that discussion. Just note that in your notes, that it takes a little bit longer than that, right? And our group did a little bit of time to like introduce everyone, which you would have done hopefully at the beginning of your meeting anyway. So you wouldn't have taken that time. So what just happened? Did you all open with a brainstorm? Right? And then what about, did you clarify the ideas? Did you all feel like you understood all the ideas? I'm seeing some head nods. Good. And then for the narrow, we got through some of this. Did group 2, did you get through these steps of narrowing?
We had picked our top 2 was ours, so we prioritized, and we had a top 1. We were getting ready to go into advocate, but we got lost time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We did eliminate duplicates. So yeah, we did eliminate duplicates and prioritize, but we did not do advocate.
All right. That's about where our team was. And then we didn't quite get to close, but that's all right. So how did this process go? We could do a little debrief questions here. Like, how did it feel to be a part of that process?
I thought it was great. This is Kathy. I learned a lot and have a lot of really good ideas that I hope to take back to, I will take back to this community.
Awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate, I think Abby was our facilitator and she was very formulaic about it. And even though we were running out of time, it was like, we're still going to do it in each thing's appropriate time. And even if we don't get to things later, that's okay. We should do each section correctly. And I think that was really nice so that we didn't skip what was important about it just to finish the activities. That was really good.
Thanks, Jacob. Caitlin, how did it feel for you?
It was good. I'm realizing after actually going through the process, I think the staff over at the Ag Center, I think we did this type of, this technique when we were discussing how to move forward with our next county fair. And I'm just realizing this is probably the technique that was used because it felt very similar, but I enjoyed it.
Did you get to a decision?
Sneaking them in on you.
I know, and she was on the call earlier, and I don't see her now, but I'll have to ask her if that's what she did.
Did it work out? How did that process feel with that particular situation?
Yeah, it was good. I don't really remember how the closing went, but I know we closed. It was a few months ago, so I don't remember what conclusions we came to, but I'm sure we will revisit the closing once we start planning for the fair again.
Yeah. Nice.
Good.
Anybody else have any thoughts about how it went?
This is Jared. I mean, this is our team's first time doing this virtually. Honestly, we do this a lot in person, where you have flip charts and you have sticky notes and you're putting dots next to things, and it's really interactive when you're kind of standing around in a circle, brainstorming, making lists, and then like narrowing. And I was like, how's that going to work virtually? And it seemed anyway. It's like it kind of energized, gets a lot of information out, and then you can still narrow down using asterisks instead of stickies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. And Tess, you were on it in the beginning of just like, how is this going to work differently in video? And it is a little bit different. And we talked as a team, like you could use the chat for narrowing, and you could also use this annotate feature potentially as another way to like rank things. So I think there's some options out there. And I also think, you know, instead of staring at your screen, looking at flip chart paper when you like see the top ideas, there's something that's a little bit different about visualizing things than just staring at your screen. So that's a little tough. Okay, Tess says, what is annotate feature? Well, you could do it right now. We'll just share with you. If you're all seeing that Abby has shared your screen, if you go to the top of your screen where it says view options by the green bar and scroll down to the annotate feature, do you see that, Tess? And then you can click on a stamp or text or anything, and you can put, there's a lot of hearts happening beside certain things. So the thing about this is you would need to take a screenshot of what this is to capture it, right? Or you would need to like count all the marks and put that in the notes or something. But it's certainly a way to engage people because this is a hot mess and totally fun. I love it. So it's another way, and then the host has the ability to clear everybody's, or you can just clear your own. So the host could clear everything, and now it's not nearly as fun, but you can still go ahead and do it again. She can't keep you from doing it. There's that. So we felt like that. Nice llama, Amy. We know that's you. So
do you know who drew what?
That's a great question. I don't think that there is an option to know who is doing what. So that is a good way to just like not know. Or
So
you would need to write your name.
Share that with, depending on how large your audience is on your Zoom call.
Yeah, interesting.
Very fast.
It could be another way to Zoom bomb a meeting of just putting hearts everywhere.
The other thing that really stood out to me is front-end preparation of your folks, and again, ways to adapt to multiple learners, like a brainstorm of just, hey, you're going first and what's your idea? It doesn't work for somebody like me. So again, like making sure that folks have clarity beforehand about what's going to be asked, or that you can make a minute for folks to scribble on their own, or, you know, again, just like thinking through multiple learners and alternative pathways to brainstorming.
That's a
especially because of the Zoom, I mean.
Great note, Tess. So going back to, like taking time for everybody, like take a minute and write down your ideas. That's a really good option. And then naming, like we did this in previous sessions, of naming that we're gonna do rounds and you have the right to pass, and we'll do a different order in different rounds. You know, some of those things coming up, just exactly to name different learning styles and engage people in different ways, which is great. What other questions or ideas do you guys have that about this process or how you might improve it?
I just want to note, Jenny, that Dallas is sharing some things about the annotate feature, that it can, the arrow will show who votes for what, and that you can turn annotate off if needed to for security reasons.
Oh, I see. Interesting. I like the arrow and security features. Thank you, Dallas. Excellent. Any other questions, or do you think you might use this in a situation?
I'm wondering if you have any insights in the closing section about strong disagreement. I feel like the way that I'm kind of mentally visualizing it, there's just a lot of kind of easy sort of agreements that come out through narrowing down to like best case practices. But like I remember that one of those first slides, there's sort of like the veto person. I'm just sort of curious if y'all have any perspectives on when there's either a single person or just a strong section of the group that feels very strongly about something, against some of the top ideas and kind of how you work through that.
I think that's a great point. I think number one is making sure you're clear about your goals, desired outcomes, and revisiting that and seeing how the ideas really reflect what you really want to get out of it. And then that's a great point. What do you guys think are other ideas for how to manage that?
This is Jared. I mean, Jacob, I think that's a great question. And I think in my experience from using this tool over the past several years is that it kind of gets you around that. It kind of like having the opportunity to have the brainstorm of everyone putting their ideas out and then being able to answer questions about them and then to be able to clarify. You start to fully understand why someone is putting forward an idea. And then when you do the kind of like, the voting basically, with your dots, you're really seeing in real time how it's resonating with a full group. And so it's harder then for someone to like really stake themselves out on a limb, like, this is the one thing I want to do. And, it's like not really resonating that hard. So, I mean, I think difficult personalities, which is something we covered in the last session, those are always something to be managed. But to me, it feels like this process kind of helps mitigate some of that. And the process itself kind of gets you through working through some of that. I don't know if that makes sense to others.
Yeah. And two other things that I think are helpful just to remember, or maybe three, but one is like the process is clearly defined of like what you're going to do as a facilitator, and that helps. But the advocate thing in narrow is really helpful. And I think that piece is when you really share that like your personal experience is the most important piece here. And so when you feel in a gut feeling something isn't right, just really ask people to advocate and just question something in that narrow piece. And I think it's like one of the shared agreements we named before is nothing can substitute experience. And it's really important. So sharing that to advocate for something to move up to the top, I think is helpful. And then also the last piece in closing about what's missing and thinking about how we incorporate equity into our decision-making and say, just reminding people of that. Is this reaching the people we intended it to? Is this like, how are we incorporating equity into this decision-making or in our choices? Like, and thinking about who's not at the table. That question of what's missing, I think to me is a more reflective space and helps us, I don't know, put some things in perspective. So those are some ideas. Anybody else?
I just want to echo that advocate note, and it may be worth us recording a version that actually gets to that point, because it's a really useful facilitation tool to not just rely on the votes, but to take it a step further and get to some discussion.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Anything else you want to ask about this? We'll certainly share out these slides and share out these tools, and we encourage you to practice it. And like in the breakout facilitator notes, like those things were written out for people. And I don't know that we've named this before on these calls, but we nearly always have a facilitator's agenda and a participant agenda. So when you're facilitating, it's a helpful reminder to talk out through how you're going to do it, what the process is, and know it there so that you're not having to figure out what you need to do next, but it's already written out there for you. Particularly when you're in the case that Lashana described, when you're trying to participate, you're trying to do tech things, you're trying to do several things at once, which we hope we aren't. It's more important to have a very clear facilitator's agenda that helps you guide where you're going and gives you reminders of just like taking a pause or just reminding to like ask people on the phone for their input because they might not be able to give it right away, or just certain things like that. Megan, how are we doing in the chat? Anything else come up?
Yeah, I think that was it. I think we're good on chat.
Okay, you guys, well, if there's not much else, I think we're gonna end up doing our closing. Right?
Yes. So Dallas has already shared this poll with you. We'd love to just get your feedback in real time about these 2 questions. What was your overall reaction to this training, and do you plan to use any of this information in your own work? So appreciate you sharing there. Awesome. And there's the results. So appreciate you all's feedback on that. Got some more annotating going on, which we totally love. Great. So
a Zoom tip reminder too, your poll results are going to go away if you don't take a screenshot of it. So if you do a poll and you want the results later, take a screenshot and put it in your notes.
Yeah, great. And we are doing that with all the polls we take. You'll see them in the notes that we take and the notes that we'll post to folks. Great. So want to appreciate you all for making the time to be here. So it's fun and interactive and continues to be super interactive. We're getting lots of hearts and stars. Just want to remind you all that these trainings are happening every other week, and we have 2 left. The next one is on May 14th, same time. It's a Thursday afternoon. We would love to see you there. The sign up for that is on our website, and there's a link to it that will be in these slides as well. And we are also doing connections calls for food councils to hear how different councils are working with the COVID crisis and needs in their communities, and then sharing with one another. And so those also happen every other week. So next Tuesday, May 5th, will be our next call. We'd love to have you there. You can also sign up at the link that will be in these slides or on our website. And so we'd love to just close by hearing from folks 1 word about what you, how you're feeling leaving today's call. And so I'm just going to go in the order that is on my screen, and I'll type it into the chat so you have it. We're going to go Jenny, Kathy, Amy, LaShawna, Tess, Lindsay, Megan, Jared, Jacob, Abby, Caitlin. Who did I forget? All right, 1 word, how you're feeling leaving today's call.
All right, I feel creative.
Armed.
Amy?
Rushed.
Rushed. Rushed?
Refreshed.
Refreshed.
Motivated.
Tess, that's to you.
She said good in the chat.
Thank you.
Motivated as well.
I am feeling excited.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm hungry.
Feeling more, I'd say more organized. I know that's 2 words.
We'll take it. Caitlin, let's go with you, and then I'll go.
I'm feeling cozy.
Cozy? That's great. I'm feeling grateful. Thank you all so much. We will be happy to answer any questions that you have about this tool or others, and hope to see you really soon. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Bye,
Thank
all.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.